All right, so today we're going to be doing a deep dive into online language learning. Specifically, we're going to be looking at Alexandra's educational studio. And we've got a whole bunch of materials here, articles, interviews with students, just a ton of stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, and it looks like Alexandra's story is a pretty interesting one. So we know she started out as an interpreter, went all over Europe doing that, and then she ends up founding this online language studio. So somewhere in there, she clearly got bitten by the teaching bug.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not just about her founding the studio either. We've also got some stuff here about what makes her teaching style so unique.
Okay.
Like there's this one student, Alina, who she taught for like years and years.
Wow.
Yeah, so we'll definitely have to dig into that. But first things first, let's take a look at Alexandra's background. We know she's got a master's degree from Kiev National Linguistic University in English translation and interpretation. But then she decides to switch gears and go into teaching. And not just for a little while either. She's been at it for over 15 years.
Yeah, that's interesting. It really makes you wonder if all that time as an interpreter had an impact on her teaching style. Like maybe it helped her figure out how to break down tough language concepts and explain them in a way students could understand.
Oh, for sure. Because being an interpreter isn't just about knowing the words right. You have to be able to get the meaning across, even if there are cultural differences and stuff. So maybe that experience gave her a different perspective on language learning. And on top of that, we know Alexandra's all about trying out new teaching methods. Like she doesn't just stick to one textbook or anything. She's always looking for ways to make things better for her students.
Huh. So she's big on that whole personalized learning thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, that brings us back to Alina. So Alexandra taught this girl for 15 years. 15 years from when Alina was just 2 years old, all the way till she was 17.
Wow, that's incredible.
Right. And with Alexandra's help, Alina ended up getting into the Canadian Ukrainian Novopečerska School in Kiev, which is a pretty prestigious place. And then she went on to study at a top university in Warsaw.
That's amazing. You don't see that kind of teacher-student relationship too often these days, especially not in the online world.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what Alexandra's secret is. And it's not just Alina either. We've got another story here about a student who studied with her for 12 years. And this student ended up getting a band 7 on the IELTS exam.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a big deal. By the way, for anyone who doesn't know, IELTS stands for the International English Language Testing System. It's like this worldwide test for people whose first language isn't English.
Right. A lot of universities use that to decide who to accept.
Exactly. So it sounds like Alexandra's really good at helping her students succeed on these big exams.
Yeah, those tests can be super stressful.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so another interesting thing we found about Alexandra, she was involved with this organization called CoServe International. And they're all about something called servant leadership. Basically, it means you lead by serving others.
Okay.
Yeah. And it seems like this whole experience had a big impact on Alexandra. Like it really shaped her values and the way she interacts with people.
That's fascinating. I'd love to know more about how that servant leadership philosophy plays out in her teaching.
Oh, absolutely. And get this, her mentor from CoServe, a guy named Jeff Stevens. Well, he's actually an advisor for Alexandra's studio now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that connection's pretty clear. But we'll talk more about the whole team dynamic a little later. So anyway, we've got Alexandra with all this language experience, a passion for helping her students, and then this strong ethical background.
Sounds like the perfect combination.
It does, doesn't it? And that brings us to the founding of Alexandra's educational studio in 2025. And one thing that's really interesting is that it's entirely online, which, says something about how she's willing to adapt and use new technology to reach more people.
Yeah, for sure. But there are a ton of online English programs out there these days. So what makes Alexandra's studio different?
Well, we've talked about personalized learning, but to really understand what makes it unique, we need to look at two things. First, Alexandra's credentials, and second, the incredible team of instructors she's put together.
I'd hear it.
All right, so we already know Alexandra's got that master's degree and tons of teaching experience, but she's also got a TESOL certification.
TESOL.
Yeah, it stands for Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages. It's basically a globally recognized qualification for English teachers.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and it probably means she learned a lot about different learning styles and teaching methods and how to make lessons work for all sorts of students. And it doesn't stop there. She's also taught at some really impressive places, like Oxford International, the University of British Columbia, and Humber Institute. Oh, and she's registered in the Callan method, which is this fast-paced teaching approach that focuses on speaking.
Wow, she's done a lot.
She has. And on top of all that, she's still involved with CoServe International, so she's still learning from her mentor, Jeff Stevens. Oh, and did I mention she got a Band 7 on the IELTS exam herself?
Seriously?
Yeah, so she knows exactly what it takes to ace that test.
That's impressive. Okay, so now I'm really curious about this team she's put together.
Well, you won't be disappointed,
Ew.
because this team is full of absolute rock stars. Each one of them brings something special to the table. Okay, so first up, we've got Jeff Stevens. He's the mentor from CoServe International, remember? And now he's an advisor for the studio.
Right.
I wonder what kind of insights he brings from that whole leadership background.
Well, I'm guessing he helps Alexandra create that supportive community vibe that she's so big on.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it's not just about mentorship either. They've also got these specialist instructors, like Jeff Feldman from Canada. He's their accent reduction and speech expert.
Oh, cool. That's got to be super helpful for students who want to use English in like a professional setting or maybe for university. I mean, having clear pronunciation can make a big difference in how confident you feel.
Oh, totally. And then there's Louise. She's also from Canada, and she specializes in business English.
Okay.
Yeah, so she helps students with things like writing professional emails, resumes, cover letters, all that stuff.
Ah, so it's not just about learning the language itself. It's about knowing how to use it in different situations.
Exactly. And that's something Alexandra really focuses on. Okay, you ready for this?
Yeah.
The next team member is Lori. She is a native English speaker from the U.S., but get this, she's also a blogger and a polyglot. She speaks Spanish, German, Russian, and she's learning Polish and Ukrainian.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, you got to admire that kind of dedication to language learning.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And I bet her experience as a polyglot gives her a unique perspective on the whole process, the challenges and rewards of learning all those different languages.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, and last but not least, we've got Sydney from Vancouver. She's the studio's IELTS and CELPIP expert.
CELPIP?
Yeah, it stands for the Canadian English Language Proficiency Index Program. It's another English proficiency test. A lot of people use it for immigration to Canada.
Ah.
And fun fact, Sydney actually helped Alexandra prepare for her own IELTS exam.
Oh, wow, that's cool. So they've all got these impressive qualifications, but they've also got real-world experience helping students succeed.
Exactly. And that's just a small taste of the team. You can find out more about all the instructors and the courses on the studio's website. We'll put the link in the show notes.
Awesome. So it sounds like Alexandra's really put together this amazing team. Like they can handle all sorts of learners with different needs and goals.
Right. And it all comes back to that idea of personalized learning, which seems to be at the heart of everything Alexandra does.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, we talked about Alina's success story. I'm curious to know more about how this whole personalized attention thing actually works in practice.
Especially in an online environment.
Right. It can't be easy to tailor lessons for each student when you're not in a traditional classroom.
Yeah, how do they do it?
Well, on their website, they mentioned small group classes and one-on-one tutoring.
Okay.
So it seems like there's big on interaction and direct feedback. But there's also this emphasis on mentorship, which we haven't really talked about in detail.
Yeah, I'd love to know more about that.
Me too.
Like, how do they make sure online students get that kind of personal guidance? That's what I'm really curious about.
It's definitely not your typical picture of mentorship, right? Like you don't usually think about online learning and having this close personal connection.
Right. It's not exactly like sitting down with someone in a library.
Exactly. But that's what I think is so cool about Alexandra's approach. It seems like they've actually figured out a way to make that personal connection work online.
Yeah, and that's so important with language learning. I mean, it's not just about memorizing grammar rules and vocabulary. It's about feeling confident, and being able to push through those times when you feel stuck and eventually being able to express yourself in this whole new language.
Absolutely. And that's where I think a mentor can really make all the difference. Like having someone there who believes in you, who can help you when things get tough, and who celebrates your wins with you, that can be so motivating.
Yeah, it's like having your own personal cheerleader, someone who gets what you're going through and can give you advice that actually makes sense for you.
Exactly. Okay, so before we wrap things up, I want to mention one more thing that really stood out to me, and that's the diversity of the teaching team. I mean, we've got Jeff Stevens with his leadership background, Jeff Feldman, the pronunciation expert, Louise, who focuses on business English, Lori, the polyglot, and Sydney, the test prep guru.
Wow, it's like they've got it all covered.
Right.
It's kind of like a mini United Nations of language learning.
I love that.
And I think it really reflects how global English has become. It's not just tied to one specific accent or culture anymore. It's a language that connects people from all over the world.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it makes the learning experience so much richer when you've got teachers who can bring all those different perspectives and experiences to the table.
Totally. It's like saying, hey, there's no one right way to learn or speak English. It's all about embracing the different accents, dialects, and cultural influences that make the language what it is.
So to sum it all up, we've taken a look at Alexandra's journey from being an interpreter to founding this amazing online educational studio. We've explored her teaching philosophy, and we've met the incredible team of instructors she's put together. And I think what really makes Alexandra's educational studio stand out is that commitment to personalized learning mentorship and building a supportive community.
Yeah, it's definitely a different approach than what you usually see in language education. It's more focused on the individual needs and goals of each student.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this. As you're learning a new language or even just working on your skills, think about how having a mentor or getting personalized support could help you along the way. It can make all the difference in reaching your goals. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.